carpentiere, contadino in fuoco dottore, musicista e poi barbiere, ingegnere e minatore, astronauta e cavaliere, ciabattino muratore, ortolano e cameriere, tagliaboschi e poi pittore.
Osvaldo!
This is planet Earth. We are in prehistoric times, and Oswald is traveling in a world covered by forests and full of animals. It's a hard life, isn't it, Oswald? Alone and unarmed, you're surrounded by dangerous creatures. Only an alliance with other men can make your life safer. There's strength in numbers, isn't there, Oswald? One fine day, you realize that being in possession of a stick makes you stronger. If a sharp, flat stone is added to that stick, you get an axe. It's your first invention. It's a weapon, but also an all-purpose tool. Well done, Oswald. This is the birth of technology. During this period, there is no way of conserving food. You have to hunt every day and live like a nomad in order to follow the big herds of animals. Then, when darkness falls, you can't see anymore and you're afraid. It's only night time, Oswald, but you've got no form of light. Fire. What a marvelous discovery. This strange phenomenon, which burns and hurts if you put your finger too close to it, can be very useful if you learn to control it. In cooking, for example. You also use fire to harden the tips of the arrows which you use with your new incredible weapon, the bow. The bow enables you to hunt without having to get too close to dangerous animals. It has other uses too. It can serve as a drill for lighting a fire. During this period, you burn animal bones to make a fire. Oh yes, Oswald, your axe is still too rudimentary to cut firewood from trees. In the evenings, you light a fire as protection against wild beasts, and you paint pictures of your hunting adventures on the cave walls. In this way, the dawn of civilization lasted for many thousands of years. Then, about 8,000 years ago, a revolutionary discovery was made. Yes, Oswald, I mean agriculture. After careful observation, you realized that the growth of plants follows the cycle of the seasons, and that if you put a seed back into the soil, after several months it produces a new plant with more seeds. In order to work the land, you leave your nomadic lifestyle and build your first real home. In this period, you're also very busy making farming tools. Thanks to grinding techniques, you're able to obtain really sharp blades. And what a lot of tools you can make now. The sickle, the hoe, and even the first plough. But it's hard going pulling it, Oswald. Thanks to these new tools, your harvests are so abundant that you find yourself faced by a new problem: how to conserve all those seeds. Terracotta, too fragile to be of use when you are a nomad hunter, is now the ideal material for making lots of different kinds of containers. This is also the period in which the first machine is made, the loom. The loom facilitates the production of large quantities of cloth. And, for the first time in history, Oswald, you begin to plant seeds which produce not food, but textile fibres. As a result, trade is born. But there aren't any roads. It's much easier to use rivers. You let yourself be carried by the current on tree trunks. But now it's time to build real boats to transport your merchandise. And so the first towns spring up on the banks of big rivers. In the safety of your home, Oswald, you enjoy carrying out experiments. The kitchen is the first chemical laboratory, and in this period you discover how to make beer. Cheers, Oswald! The regular rise and fall of the river waters makes the soil fertile. In order to predict this movement of the rivers, the first calendars are compiled. Good, Oswald. This is the birth of history. All kinds of trade prosper in the towns on the banks of the big rivers. Now, Oswald, we need a means of organising all these goods, of counting and registering them. The most convenient thing to do is invent writing. In the meantime, the idea of rotary movement spreads throughout the known world. The first wheels are used by the potter in his work. They enable him to make very beautiful vases. But the real wheel boom is in the transport sector. You don't have to drag heavy sledges anymore, Oswald. Travel is much more comfortable on a cart mounted on wheels and pulled by oxen. The invention of the wheel even revolutionises war. Carriages used in battle are pulled at first by small asses, then by fast horses, and have spoked wheels. Metallurgy is also created in this period. The first metal that you work is the gold which you find beside the rivers, or a small quantity of iron from which you make fish hooks. The great discovery is that fire can be used to separate metal from its minerals. The first furnaces are simple holes lined with clay. Later, you build brick furnaces and succeed in obtaining higher temperatures. Now you're in a position to melt down some metals and cast them in moulds to make rasps, saws, chisels, blades, etc. By melting together copper and tin, you obtain a new, highly resistant metal, bronze. This new metal can be used to make invincible weapons. The new bronze sword is slimmer and stronger than its fragile copper predecessor. In the Mediterranean basin, the first great trading civilizations are flourishing. The fastest form of transport is the boat, but seafaring boats have to be specially built. The Egyptians, for example, build boats without a keel, ideal for navigating the Nile, but not suited to the high seas. The Phoenicians and Greeks, on the other hand, build boats with keels, and are thus able to take to the open seas. In the ports, Oswald, you meet merchants from all nations who exchange their goods for others, or buy goods with heavy lingots. Your purse must be very heavy. Then a revolutionary invention spreads from Lydia, money. This makes it much easier to measure wealth. During this same period, the Phoenicians invent a new form of writing, the alphabet. The Greeks add vowels to the Phoenician symbols, and their use becomes more widespread. Egyptian hieroglyphs are very complex. Each sign corresponds to a new word. Few people manage to read and write them. It's all so much simpler with the new Greek alphabet, isn't it, Oswald? This new means of communication spreads rapidly amongst the merchants, and trade increases. Athens is now the city of greatest importance. It is here that schools of philosophy originate, and the study of mathematics, medicine, and astronomy flourishes. In Greek society, however, slaves do all the work, and no one thinks of developing ways of lessening their workload. Let's take a look at Sicily now. In Syracusa, in roughly the 3rd century before Christ, lives Archimedes, the greatest scientist of ancient times. Archimedes has a real passion for ingenious devices, and since Syracuse is often at war, he builds many war machines. This, Oswald, is the catapult. This, on the other hand, is called a ballista. This is a gigantic crane. With this crane, it's possible to lift enemy ships out of the water and smash them against the beach. All of these devices use highly resistant cables made from the nerves of animals, but also from women's hair, which was very expensive. Meanwhile, the Iron Age is 1,000 years old, having begun with a mass migration from Asia Minor to Europe of peoples who spread the first ironworking techniques. Now, after 1,000 years, the Romans carry invincible weapons made by expert smiths who, by heating the raw materials over coals and then beating it, are able to obtain good, solid and flexible iron. Hail, Oswald! Rome's fame and weapons are about to conquer the world. A large part of Roman technology is applied to war. This technology supplies the Roman army with weapons, war machines, and fortification systems. One of the characteristics of the Romans is their habit of applying and perfecting the inventions of the populations they conquer. For instance, the Archimedean screw, or cochlea, is adopted by the Romans for drying out mines. The Romans are strong even at sea. The Roman warship is sleek and fast, with a double line of oarsmen. At the bow, there's a ram capable of piercing the sides of enemy vessels. This ship also has a small sail, the bowsprit, unfurled if too many oarsmen are lost in battle. The Roman merchant ship has a square sail, which allows movement only if there is an aft wind. But the Romans are unbeatable above all in civil engineering. Roman roads link up the entire empire, from Britain to Africa, from Morocco to the Middle East. Their aqueducts are impressive. They are able to carry water into the cities, where it is then distributed to the houses via lead piping. The rich Roman citizen likes his comforts. He lives in luxurious marble-lined palaces, in rooms furnished for the first time with tables and cupboards. In Rome, the mass production of ceramics and glass-making prosper, and towards the end of 3 AD, the first glass mirrors come into use. The fall of the Roman Empire leaves Europe without a cultural guide. The Middle Ages begin, and you live with your family, Oswald, near the great Christian abbeys which spread all over Europe. Then, from the Middle East, a new civilization begins to make its presence felt. It is Islam, of the Arab nations. The Arabs are skillful engineers. They invent the windmill and perfect the watermill with which the Romans were already familiar. The Arab's great speciality, though, is alchemy. Shut in his laboratory, the Arab alchemist seeks the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. But, using glass stills, he also produces alcohol and precious perfumed essences. Even the use of enamels on pottery is an invention attributed to the Arab alchemist. Islam is the gateway to the East, and the Arabs who trade with China begin to spread that distant civilization's products and inventions in Europe. First and foremost comes silk, of which the manufacturing processes are closely guarded secrets. The Chinese also know about strange inflammable mixtures which can become formidable weapons. This population, with its staple diet of rice, is expert in irrigation techniques and has even invented a simple but useful work tool, the wheelbarrow. This is a time of war and invasions, but you learn a lot too, Oswald. The stirrup and the horseshoe arrive from the east, revolutionizing riding. The Arabs bring new types of cloth to Europe, Damascus from Damascus, and fustian and muslin from Egypt. The Arabs are also responsible for the spread of paper, a new extraordinary material which begins to replace parchment and papyrus. Thus, during this period, Islam is the center of cultural and scientific life, particularly in mathematics and astronomy. The study of medicine thrives. The first hospitals, equipped with extensive libraries, appear near the mosques. In Europe, on the other hand, the Christian knights prepare for war against the Arab infidels, spending all of their money on the construction of very heavy armor. Smiths are kept very busy. The Arabs introduce the triangular Latin sail, which permits sailing with almost any variation of wind, and a straight rudder at the helm, which makes the ship more manageable. The Arabs' greatest gift to Europe, though, is their way of counting, which replaces the complex Roman method, and which we still use today. Towards the end of the Middle Ages, some courageous Italian merchants reached the shores of China too. The Venetian, Marco Polo, tells of marvelous things upon his return. Astronomical clocks, fireworks with a black powder, and an instrument that makes sea voyages safer, the compass. What did you say, Oswald? Yes, you're right. Flavio Gioia, from Amalfi, invents the compass in Europe, unaware of the existence of the Chinese version. What a lot of traffic there is in this period, isn't there, Oswald? Populations are continually on the move, either for war or for trade, and many different civilizations come into contact. During the Middle Ages, the secret of silk is disclosed, and the breeding of silkworms begins in Europe. In the meantime, in the big cities, the production of handicrafts picks up. The smith obtains increasingly high temperatures thanks to wind furnaces, and finally succeeds in melting iron. The Chinese black powder is applied to weaponry, and so the construction of the first small cannon begins. Small, but deadly. During this period, Venice is the most important glass-making centre, and it is here that the first eyeglasses are produced. They are the first spectacles. The first universities are established in Italy and France. Unfortunately, crowding in the cities and trade contacts with distant nations favour terrible illnesses. In 1348, the Black Death arrives with ships which come from the east and infects the whole of Europe. We are at the start of the 15th century, and from Italy, a renewed interest in the study of nature, technology and the arts spreads all over Europe. In 1446, in Magonza, Germany, Mr. Gutenberg invents a new printing system with movable type. Thus, typography, modern printing, is created. Until now, fixed type has been used for printing in Europe, suited above all to printing holy pictures. Pages are still made of parchment, sheepskin, and to produce a 200-page book, the skins of 12 sheep are required. With the invention of printing and the use of paper, the first real industrial product appears, the book. Towards the end of the 15th century, people are becoming convinced that the earth is round and not flat. An Italian navigator, Christopher Columbus, decides that if he continues to sail in a westerly direction, he will eventually reach the Indies. Columbus is right, but before arriving at the Indies, he discovers a new continent, America. Columbus sails on board a new kind of ship, the Spanish Caravel, which combines the merits of the Mediterranean hull with some features typical of Nordic ships. The Caravel is the first ocean-faring vessel. It provides the model for the construction of the bigger, stronger carack used by the English, with which, in the following century, they become the undisputed rulers of the seas. Even navigational instruments are perfected. The astrolabe allows the accurate calculation of a ship's position. Meanwhile, in the countryside, the use of hydraulic power begins to substitute the use of animals. 1452 sees the birth in Tuscany of the greatest genius of the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo is a painter, architect, and engineer. But above all, he's the first scientist in a truly modern sense. He establishes a scientific theory based on observation and precision and applies it to practical necessities. His beautiful drawings constitute the first accurate technical illustrations and are enriched by precise explanations. He designs machines to serve every purpose. In textiles, for example, Leonardo perfects the loom and the spinning machine. In the military field, his designs for repeater firearms are famous. This is a springle, but Leonardo also designs quick-firing crossbows and even a steam cannon. Some of his machines, like those for flying, inspired by the flight of birds, are totally impracticable. The technology of the period is still too limited. Poor Leonardo. It must be hard to be a scientist born before your time. The intuition that inspired these designs shows the genius of their inventor all the same, doesn't it, Oswald? At the start of the 16th century, Italy and Germany shared first place in invention. In Germany, great progress is made in processing metals. Nuremberg becomes famous for the production of the first portable watches and of scientific instruments. In Venice, anyone who reveals the secrets of glass production risks the death penalty. It is here that the first patents, documents which protect inventions, appear. During this period, scientific instruments are still very often made by the scientists themselves, or alternatively, they are produced in the goldsmith's laboratory and decorated like pieces of jewellery. Meanwhile, progress in the field of metallurgy allows for the construction of increasingly sophisticated firearms, and in order to produce the ever greater quantities of metals needed in wars and shipbuilding, a great deal of wood has to be burnt. Very soon, all of Europe's forests are felled completely, and consequently, there's an energy crisis. In response to this situation, Oswald, you begin to use pit coal as a fuel and dig deep mines in order to extract it from the ground. The machine which you use to drain these mines is a suction pump. These suction pumps, my dear Oswald, are the predecessors of the steam engine, which we will come to shortly. The 17th century sees great progress in theoretical fields. Great scientists look at nature with new eyes and begin to understand its laws. Modern physics and chemistry are born. In the cathedral at Pisa, Galileo observes an oscillating chandelier and perceives the existence of the principle of the pendulum. In the following century, this very principle is applied to the measurement of time. Thus, the pendulum clock comes into being. Galileo also invents the telescope, a tube with an arrangement of lenses, which enables one to observe the planets and the stars. The modern microscope also comes from Galileo's research and allows observation of a magnified image of tiny things. And so, Oswald, whilst the great scientists invent new instruments, you produce them in your craft workshop, and you sign each one like a work of art. When ever-increasing demand leads to a rise in production, your signature becomes the trademark that we all recognize today. Interest in science continues to grow. The first science academies publish early scientific reviews, and increasing use is made of those manuals which indicate how to operate machines. With the arrival of the 18th century, the most important centres of production shift to northern Europe, especially England, a country with rich reserves of coal and iron, the raw materials destined to acquire increasing importance. And it is in England, near the coal mines, that a new revolutionary machine is invented, the steam machine. The steam machine is the end result of a long series of tests and combines discoveries about atmospheric pressure with the principles of the old suction pump used in the mines. The inventor of this extraordinary machine is Mr. Watt from Edinburgh. The steam machine is fueled with coal and has one enormous strong point. It isn't dependent on hydraulic power. It's no longer necessary to build factories near rivers, and so they are moved into the towns, where manpower is readily available. In the new mechanized factory, you, Oswald, now produce a large quantity of identical products, suitable for mass consumption. Mass production brings the spread of, among other things, the use of ceramic crockery, and of pans made from a new metal, tin. What did you say, Oswald? Yes, you're right. The steam engine has a revolutionary effect above all in the field of transport. Railway lines are an old invention of the English miners. They guide the wagons which transport coal from the depths of the pit. When the steam machine is mounted on wheels, such rails are a natural choice in the construction of a track suitable for the new steam locomotive. All aboard, Oswald! You and another 69 brave men are the first to travel by steam engine. Just think of it, Oswald. You're going at a speed of 8 kilometers per hour. The first industry to use the steam machine as a source of energy is the textile industry. Automatic looms and spinning machines are constantly updated, and English factories produce vast amounts of cloth. The needs of the textile industry also favour the development of the chemical industry, from which another revolutionary invention arises: gas lighting. But for the workers in the English factories, this means working by night too. In fact, English factories are the first to organise shift work. Gas lighting soon arrives on the street. Now it's safer when you stay out late with your friends, isn't it, Oswald? The new chemical products used to whiten cloth cause the first serious cases of pollution. And, thank goodness, the first legal action against those responsible. At the same time, in the field of metallurgy, coke, obtained by purifying pit coal, is put to use. Thanks to the use of coke, it's now possible to eliminate all impurities in the production of iron. Towards the end of a century so full of technical and scientific successes, attention is turned to ways in which you might finally conquer the skies. Hot air balloons arrive on the scene. In fact, in 1783, the Montgolfier brothers managed to get the first aerostatic balloon off the ground, inflated with hot air. The hot air is soon replaced by hydrogen, a gas which is lighter than air. My dear Oswald, we've reached the year 1800 and we're about to witness a historic event. In Milan, Alessandro Volta presents his new invention, an electric battery. Electricity is a new form of energy which has revolutionary consequences. Be careful though, Oswald. Electricity is immediately used for lighting, but the first electric lamps are very big and are only fitted in public buildings and above all in lighthouses. Towards the end of the century, Mr. Edison invents the light bulb with a filament, and so electric light becomes available to every household. In the beginning, electric plants are activated by the steam engine, but this proves very costly. In 1886, the first hydroelectric power station is constructed. It uses energy obtained through turbines powered by the movement of water. Electricity also means the arrival of long-distance communication. The first telegraph line is established in 1837 and links London to Manchester. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Morse invents the International Telegraph Code, which is still used today. The world gets smaller all the time, doesn't it, Oswald? Thanks to the production of new materials like rubber, it's now possible to make underwater communication cables which link England and Europe, and later Europe and America. In the meantime, in America, an Italian immigrant named Antonio Meucci invents the telephone. But Meucci is too poor to make the most of his invention, and an astute American by the name of Alexander Bell patents the invention, taking all the credit for it. Mr. Meucci is devastated. However, some years later, the Supreme Court of the United States decrees that the invention of the telephone is in fact his. During the 19th century, we witness a massive exodus from the countryside to the towns, despite the presentation at the 1851 Great Exhibition of some truly revolutionary agricultural machinery designed to lighten the farmer's workload. Forms of transport undergo continual improvement. The fastest and safest way to travel is by rail. This service provides regular links between the major cities. The first unbelievable steamboats appear at sea, made completely of metal, and just think, Oswald, they actually float. Meanwhile, in France, Mr. Daguerre perfects a device which reproduces optical images on paper. Photography is born. You are quite photogenic, Oswald. In the home, the first household appliance appears, the sewing machine, with which it's possible to make clothes for the whole family. On the roads, we see men, women and children travelling around on strange two-wheeled devices. They are the first bicycles. It's fun to go on long rides in the country, isn't it, Oswald? In 1885, Mr. Daimler and Mr. Benz build a self-propelled car that uses the internal combustion engine. It's the first automobile. Within a few years, the 3 wheels become 4 and are covered with inner tubes and a rubber tyre invented by a certain Mr. Dunlop. In America, Mr. Ford begins to produce cars using a new system, the conveyor belt production line. Cars produced in this way are called the T model, or the car that everyone can own, as the advert says. Towards the end of the 19th century, the United States overtakes Europe in the race for technology. The United States is in fact a nation rich in raw materials, but more importantly, it allows private enterprise a great deal of freedom. Millions of people leave Europe for the United States to make their fortune, or simply to seek improved working conditions. There are many factories in America's big cities, while the boundless prairies are transformed into fields for agriculture, and, thanks to modern farm machinery, harvests are more than abundant. Oh yes, Oswald, the United States is now the world's #1 economic force. Meanwhile, near Bologna, in Italy, Mr. Marconi is experimenting with a wireless transmission system. He uses electromagnetic waves discovered by Mr. Hertz, and eventually manages to transmit a signal for some distance. The era of telecommunications begins. Now that the need for cables has been eliminated, it's even possible to communicate with ships sailing the seas. More invisible waves are discovered. In 1895, Mr. Roentgen discovers X-rays, which are immediately used for examining the inside of the human body. So we've come to the end of the 19th century. It's December the 29th, 1899. And tonight, the Lumiere brothers present their new invention, the motion picture. There are only 30 people present, but what a success! Within just a few years, the cinema spreads all over the world. The United States dominates this sector too. The film industry is born in Hollywood and exports movie stars, the new modern-day myths, worldwide. The conquest of the skies is also imminent. At the start of this century, aerostatic balloons are perfected. Their shape is lengthened, and the addition of propellers makes them faster and more manageable. The result of these modifications is von Zeppelin's famous airship. The only problem is that they are filled with hydrogen gas, which is highly explosive. You were always a brave chap, weren't you, Oswald? On December the 17th, 1903, man's dream of flying comes true. Yes, Oswald, using a machine, not a balloon. And what a great success it is. The Wright brothers had attached an internal combustion engine to a winged contraption, and this marks the beginning of the future space era. The quality of life improves constantly at the start of the 20th century, and people live longer thanks to progress in medicine. In 1928, an important discovery is made. Mr. Fleming notices that a certain type of mold kills bacteria. This mold is called penicillin and is the modern defense against infection. Meanwhile, radiotelegraphy techniques are perfected, and a radio capable of broadcasting voices and sounds is developed. Oswald and his family now listen to music and news reports from all over the world. Just a few years pass before a picture is added to the voices. The first experiments in television broadcasting begin in London in 1936. Television opens a new window to the world. Wonderful, isn't it, Oswald? The mass media soon becomes a new industry. Advertisements broadcast on radio or TV become an indispensable means of selling large quantities of all kinds of products which industry puts on the market. The strength of television lies in the fact that it reaches almost every household and can even show events as they happen. But be careful, Oswald. Too much television is bad for you. So here we are, on the threshold of the year 2000. Scientific and technological progress over the last 2 centuries has been overwhelming. The cities have become megalopolis. Dozens of satellites circle the Earth, and permanent orbiting space stations will probably be built in the future. Roads are full of every kind of vehicle imaginable. And in the meantime, computers radically change the way we live, work, and have fun. Tell me, Oswald, do you like video games? But not everything is going so well. The world is divided between great wealth and extreme poverty. The ecological balance is seriously distorted. Our planet, Earth, is in danger. We live surrounded by plastic. Forests the size of nations are felled. And there's a new problem to consider: population growth. Just think, Oswald. In less than 50 years, the Earth's population has doubled. There's an increasing demand for energy to power vehicles and household appliances. Nuclear energy has not solved all our problems. There are still many dangers and unknown factors attached to it. Words like contamination, radioactivity, waste, and toxic clouds are, sadly, heard all too frequently. Many scientists all over the world are studying ways of producing clean energy. It has become man's prime objective. Tell me, my dear Oswald, now that we've reached the end of our journey, how do you imagine the future? Trips to the moon or Mars? Whatever happens, let's hope that your descendants, who might even be born in space, find a lovely garden when they return to planet Earth. Bye for now, Oswald. We'll join you again for your next adventure.